animals. So in the interest of our speaker's topic today, I thought it appropriate to share a simple Catholic prayer inspired by St. Francis for domestic pets to remind us of the importance of all of God's creation. So let us pray. O God, you have made us and all living things. You are even more wonderful than what you have made. We thank you for giving us these pets who bring us joy, and you take care of us so also that we may ask your help, that we might care for those who trust us to look after them. In your name we pray. Amen.
Thank you, Doug. That message. Thank you. Well, the next thing I'd like to do is welcome any guests we have, and we like to do that, or at least under my reign here. Have you stand and be acknowledged so that we can applaud and welcome you here. So all of our guests today. Thank you for joining us, and if you are not a member of Rotary, please consider possibly being one. So ask the person next to you what the process is if you're interested. Thank you. Next, we get to, speaking of a new member, we get to introduce a new member today, or at least to give her the badge. Sarah Watkins. I see her coming forward. So Sarah has been through the process and now reaps the rewards. Well, Sarah first. Oh, give me that red badge that you have. Because I'm going to give you a blue badge. All right. And that's not all. You get the Rotary roster. You get a plaque to put on your wall.
No.
Anywhere. What?
Just a badge. Just a badge.
What are we doing here? Is this Sarah Watkins? What?
Just
What do you want? Okay, where's the next president? Better take over. Okay, I just exchanged a blue badge for a red badge with a lot of extra stuff. Okay. All right. On your table, I believe there are some flyers about some drum classes, some opportunities for to learn how to play a drum. These are adult drum classes, February 7th, 8th, and 9th in the evening. And if you are interested in learning how to play, I think there are 3 different types of drums. You can sign up and spend an evening learning how to do that with very talented instructors. These instructors are coming to town to teach students from Garfield and Gilbert schools in drum sessions, and they will be preparing for, I think, a performance at the end of the week. So if you'd like to be an adult in a drum session, those flyers are on the table. A reminder that we have the opportunity to tour Perry Technical Institute on the 15th of February, starting at 12 o'clock. We had a great program about Perry Tech and what they're doing there. This is an opportunity to see what they're doing inside, the improvements they've made over the years. I don't think I've been inside there for probably 30 years, so a lot's changed. I'm looking forward to seeing what is new. February 15th, 12 to 1. After today's program by Tom Tochterman, our speaker, he's going to switch gears and spend some time talking about glass recycling. The Chelan Club has instituted a glass recycling program, and he is going to stay after and present some information about that program and how to maybe get involved in glass recycling in Yakima. So you're welcome to stay afterwards for that. I think at this time, whoops, I got one more. If you have not completed the Rotary survey that was emailed out twice, I think, last week, maybe last Monday, or this Monday, you can still fill that out and submit it. It's just important for us on the board and on the Imagine Rotary Committee to get your input about our Rotary Club. Please don't say anything about the president, but about the function, how we operate, suggestions. It's just really important to get that feedback from you. So if you haven't filled out that survey, please do. All right, Matt Morgan is going to introduce a new member, and I'll get it right this time.
We'll see. We'll see. If he doesn't give the badge away before my person gets here, we'll be just fine. So, good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, President Rick, and one has to acknowledge Carolyn for no other reason than she really kind of scares me. Everybody's always saying how sweet she is and how nice she is and how there's not a mean bone in her body, and I beg to differ. She threatened me when I came up to the desk this morning, and actually, case in point, you may ask me, well, you haven't heard it yet. Case in point, you may ask yourself, why am I carrying an electric dog collar? The type used in training field dogs. Carolyn told me I had to wear this so that she could pop me from the audience if I got off task or went too long. She even made me practice with it at the office with her, and she even giggled when it popped me a few times. So even Daryl Blue said he's scared of her too. So I think I have very good backing on this. So since I can sense this going off, back to business. I'm here to introduce Stephen Troy Gustafson. And this is actually a good light for both of us. First things you need to know, and actually Rick asked me this, so here's your answer, Rick. He goes by Stephen. Don't call him Steve, Steve-O, Steve-Arino. It irritates him. Stephen was born in Colorado Springs, and before coming to Yakima to pursue, I forgot to start my timer, damn, okay. Before coming to Yakima to pursue his bank career, he lived in Fort Collins, Colorado. Spending the bulk of his life in Colorado, he is a religious Broncos fan. Mile High Stadium is his temple, and John Elway is the patron saint. Go Broncos. Okay, those are about the only two things you really need to know about him. Stephen went to Western State Colorado University, where he was a business and accounting major. He also played strong safety on the football team, but apparently he wasn't strong enough because he broke his leg. And that was the end of the football career. But by his own admission, he got straight A's after that, and it may be the first time on record where football actually knocked the sense into someone instead of knocking it the other way around. Now, this is the point in the speech where I would tell you about how excited I am to introduce Stephen, what a strong character he has, and what an asset he will be to this club. But while I was preparing my comments, I accidentally came across the four-way test. And that whole is it the truth part kind of resonated in my speech presentation or preparation, and I had to rewrite the whole thing. Because if I was lying right now, Carolyn would be zapping me with this collar right now. So am I excited to introduce Stephen? Sort of, not really. I'm okay with it. Truth be told, I maybe lost a bet. I'm working it off in trade. Is he a person of fine character? Not really. To be honest, he does have a character which would be more closely defined as questionable. But technically, it is a type of character, so he does have character. All I'm saying, if you have him over to your house for a fireside dinner or a scholarship dinner, you might not want to put out the good silver, okay? I'm just saying. Truth be told, given that he was born and raised in Colorado, he's just recently started to use rudimentary tools and a sippy cup. So actually, you'd be better off going with finger food, okay? I had a lovely comment about the club finding him to be an asset. No, I won't use that. I was close, just never mind, tune your own mind. In May of 21, Stephen married the lovely Ginger Ridout, and it was the best decision he ever made, and that is the truth. We both worked together. Actually, we all three worked together. And Stephen really embraced the go big or go home philosophy because not only did he gain a wife, but 3 children, ages 8, 11, 16. By the way, Stephen is 33. Don't do the math. It just isn't pretty for anyone. But when Ginger says she is raising not 3 children, but 4 now, she's not lying. Ginger works for Union Gospel Mission. So the same charity she showed Stephen by marrying him, she puts to good use in her everyday work life. Stephen is a vice president and commercial loan officer at Heritage Bank in Union Gap. Stephen and Ginger live in Selah, where they are raising their 3 or 4 children, depending on how Ginger counts it. And I give you, Stephen, don't call me Steve, Gustafson.
Just a clarification, the standing ovation is not for Matt, but it's for Stephen. Now, I don't know, would you guess that these 2 people are friends? Who knew? But anyway, Stephen, I think I've got it right now. Got your name right, and I've got the goods right. You get a red badge, but you get more. This time I'm right. You get a roster, and Matt's number is in here. You get a plaque for any wall you want to put it on, or you can use it to fend Matt off whenever he comes close to you. And the Rotary license plate, so you can't be incognito. Everybody will know you're a Rotarian, and you must do good. Thank you. Welcome, Stephen. All right, we have up next Sergeant of Arms. And I don't think he's armed. He has a glass of water, and I don't think I'm in range. Okay.
Thank you, President Rick, Carolyn, Lorna, David, fellow Rotarians, and guests. I feel like I lost a bet following Matt, but we'll see how I can do here. Today's the 26th day of January already. Can you believe that it's almost February? Time goes by so fast. I know when I was little, my mom would always say, as you get older, time goes by pretty quickly. And she lied, because it goes by about 5 times as fast as she said it did. Today we're going to learn a little bit about this date in a program I like to call January 26th, this day in history. All right now. It was a pretty good presentation, too. Everything that happened, pretty short. May have to be smarter than the clicker. All right, here we go. So nowadays, there's a holiday for every day, and in some cases, many holidays. These are just 4 of the days, holidays for today. Australia Day, Clashing Clothes Day, which I'd like to say thank you to those Rotarians today that are participating in Clashing Clothes Day. Dental Drill Appreciation Day. Past President Kurt, can you help us out? And why? Why do we have this day? And then National Peanut Brittle Day. Have several famous birthdays today. Douglas MacArthur, Paul Newman, 8-time Grammy winner Anita Baker, and the great one, Wayne Gretzky. Unfortunately, we've also lost several folks on this day. Inventor of baseball, Abner Doubleday, football coach Bear Bryant, Fish, does anybody remember Fish from Barney Miller? And only 3 years ago, Kobe Bryant and his daughter Gianna. They died in a tragic helicopter accident along with 7 others on the way to one of our basketball games. Now, usually I say that coming up here, the best thing about being Sergeant at Arms is to raise money, and the second best thing until today is to use the clicker. But we get out your wallets, we're going to try to raise some money now. Question number 1. Name the Chile Northern Territory which was admitted as the 26th state in the Union on January 26, 1837. Was it A, Wisconsin, B, Minnesota, or C, Michigan? The answer is C, Michigan. It's the only state to be divided into 2 peninsulas and to be bordered by 4 of the 5 Great Lakes. And it also has the longest shoreline, 3,300 miles. Question number 2. Groundbreaking began on this theme park on January 26, 1954. Is it A, Hershey Park in Pennsylvania, B, Disneyland, or C, Six Flags over Texas? Answer, B, Disneyland. Opened in 1955, it was the first theme park opened by the Disney Company and the only one designed and constructed under the direct supervision of Walt Disney. And to date, over 770 million visitors have been to Disneyland. Question 3. Which Elvis Presley song hit number 1 on the UK singles chart on this date in 1961? A, Are You Lonesome Tonight? B, Don't Be Cruel, or C, Jailhouse Rock? The answer is A, Are You Lonesome Tonight? Elvis is still the best-selling solo music artist according to Guinness, with sales estimated to be up to 1 billion records, and he holds the records for the most songs hitting Billboard's top 40 chart with 115. And of course, in the last couple weeks, he lost his only daughter, Lisa Marie. Question number 4. This U.S. track star became the first woman to run a mile under 4.5 minutes on January 26, 1980. Is it A, Mary Decker, B, Jacker Joyner Kersey, or C, Marion Jones? Answer is A, Mary Decker. Member of the National Track Hall of Fame, Mary Decker set 17 official and unofficial world records and 36 national records. Although she didn't win an Olympic gold medal, this photo was taken in the 1984 Olympics in the 3,000 meters. She was the favorite and got in a collision there with Britain's Zola Budd and wasn't able to finish the race. All right, we come to what I think is most everyone's favorite, my last question, number 5. Which woman was named U.S. Secretary of State in 2005 on January 26th? A, Madeleine Albright, B, Condoleezza Rice, or C, Hillary Clinton? Answer, of course, is B, Condoleezza Rice. She is the first female African-American Secretary of State and the first woman to serve as National Security Advisor. And until the election of Barack Obama as president in 2008, Rice and her predecessor, Colin Powell, were the highest-ranking African-Americans in the history of the federal executive branch. There's also one more holiday today. It's National Spouses Day. We have a quote of the day. It says, a successful marriage requires falling in love many times, always with the same person. And if you've ever been married, thought about getting married, have been to a wedding that you didn't want to go to, or purchased a wedding gift for someone you don't know, pay $1. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. I know a lot more about this day than I did before you came up here. I also know that the January 26th of 2023 is the day that Rich Austin was a Sergeant of Arms. So, anybody know that? I think everybody did. Okay, thanks, Rich. Daryl Blue is going to come forward to introduce our speaker, and Daryl is a past president and a past district governor. So please welcome Daryl.
Thank you, President Rick. April of last year, all Rotarians in North America received their Rotary magazine in the mail. And on that magazine cover, we came face to face with a couple of rhinoceros. Well, our speaker today is very familiar with those rhinoceros and has become, as we read in an article in the magazine, he's become an expert in this field of animal conservation in Africa. He's decided to do something about the issues around the conservation of rare animals. We learned in that magazine article that every 22 hours in South Africa, poachers kill one or more of these rare animals. Working in that direction to solve that issue, our speaker was a co-founder of Rhino Mercy, which is a U.S. 501c3 and is an internationally recognized group of African women and of a group of international women in Africa who are patrol officers who protect the rhinoceros in that particular part of the country. They're called the Black Mambas. Tom Tochterman, our speaker today, is a former military police officer. He was instrumental in helping to train this group of officers in South Africa, and he's going to tell us the rest of that story. Tom is a Rotarian. He's retired from a family real estate investment business, and he and his wife Julie now live in the Chelan area where he's a member of the Chelan Rotary Club. Tom also happens to be the district governor nominee for our district, District 5060, and will be our governor in 2 years. So please welcome our speaker today, District Governor nominee Tom Tochterman. Tom?
Okay, wow. Okay. Well, this thing fires up. Let me just say, no offense, Matt, but thank you very much, Daryl, for that introduction. And I hope this club, Stephen, I hope you enjoy your one day in this Rotary Club. That's amazing. Actually, I was beginning to feel real comfortable. I'm not great at public speaking, as you will probably determine real soon here. But I was starting to feel real comfortable as you started your program today, Rick. But then I started to feel very uncomfortable when I heard about Carolyn, and I'm wondering if I need to be dodging lawn darts or something up here at any point. So, Eric and John, where are you? I expect that you'll come to my aid if I ever go sideways during this presentation, or if I start catching lawn darts, you'll step in front and save me, I hope. So anyway, okay. I've got a lot of stuff to cover here today, and I do appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you and talk about two things that I'm very passionate about. Obviously, Rotary is, of course, at the top of the list, but conservation in Africa and preserving endangered species. I'm also the chair of the Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species in our own organization here, and we've got about 1,000 or so members worldwide that are Rotarians. And obviously, this is a passion in Rotary, as it's a new is our newest area of focus. Uh-oh. Boy, this is very, very sensitive. Excuse me. I've got about 2 hours worth of material that I need to give, and I've compressed into about 45 minutes. I'm going to deliver in 20, so I am going to speed slide through some of these slides, but there are a lot of graphics here that I think are very important to impress upon you the work that we're trying to do in Africa. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. So Rotary Action Groups, as I mentioned, I'm going to be presenting in part Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species today, as well as my own NGO, Rhino Mercy. And just so for those of you that may not be familiar with Rotary Action Groups, there are 27 action groups. They are chartered with a constitution, chartered by Rotary International, Board of Trustees, Board of Directors, and they're differentiated from fellowships. Fellowships are more special interest hobby types of things. Rotary Action Groups, they have to focus on at least one or more of our areas. They have to address issues among one of our 7 areas of focus. Am I speaking close enough to the mic? I feel like I'm, no? Okay. So that's basically the difference. A Rotary Action Group is formed as a special interest group of people with specific skills to address issues related to Rotary's mission. And our board of directors is very much an international board of directors. So the mission of Rhino Mercy, getting ahead of myself. The mission of RAGES is essentially to advance the reach of Rotary by providing the means for Rotary clubs and Rotary districts and Rotarians in general to get engaged with conservation issues. And I helped charter this action group back in about 2015, I think it was, 14. And back then we didn't have the area of focus for supporting the environment. So we had to fit our mission as an action group into one of these 3. Actually, we did fit our mission into these 3 specific categories. And as by the end of this presentation, you'll hopefully see how organizations or projects led by Rotarians or that involve Rotary clubs can actually address these issues and more. But as I said, we now have the area of focus for specifically supporting the environment. So basically our motto in Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species is healthy landscapes lead to healthy communities, and the reverse is also true. So I want to show you a very short video here that was produced for our action group.
There are some 8 million species on the planet, and about 1 million of them are... There are some 8 million species on the planet, and about 1 million of them are endangered of going extinct within the next 30 years, primarily due to the illicit wildlife trade industry as well as the loss of habitat. The Sumatran or the Bornean orangutan and the pygmy elephants are critically endangered, and when they're gone, they're gone. My name is Tom Tochterman, and I am the chair of Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species. The African elephant, there is one elephant essentially dying every 15 minutes, primarily due to poaching and poisoning. The Amur leopard is critically endangered. The African black rhino is in a similar situation. The African white rhino is in a little bit better condition. I got involved with RAGES as a Rotarian, being concerned about this issue. I formed a nonprofit organization called Rhino Mercy.
Hello, we are the Black Mamba's anti-poaching unit.
It's Oscar 1 patrolling the Micah side fence.
We have established the first all-female anti-poaching unit called the Black Mamba Anti-Poaching Unit in South Africa, and they're on patrol as we speak in the Greater Kruger National Park.
So this is the evidence of the poachers.
I helped a local community with the chartering of the Hoedspruit Rotary Club in South Africa, and they've been very supportive of my NGO's effort to protect their ecosystem and their ecotourism trade. And it's an example of how this Rotary Action Group is engaging in community and economic development, meeting one of the Rotary ideals or goals and objectives of an area of focus. And we're doing it through supporting the environment. In terms of the Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species, we have nearly 1,000 members from all countries that Rotary is involved with from around the world. We have as our patron Dr. Jane Goodall, and she's been very supportive of Rotary in general, but specifically the Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species, and we thank her so much for her support. Being involved in a Rotary Action Group is a great thing. If you're passionate about a specific issue, you can join one of the existing action groups, or you can create your own. There's just no limit to the things that you can do.
Okay, so as an example of some of the things that Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species is or has been involved with, and some of these slides have changed, or our activities have changed due to COVID and the global pandemic, but this is an example of a project in Borneo where a group of Rotarians from New Zealand and the UK basically have brought about the right resources and stakeholders to create both a pygmy elephant sanctuary and orangutan sanctuary. And these are endangered in that part of the world primarily due to habitat loss and conversion of basically jungles to agricultural purposes. And these little guys, they're about that tall, the elephants, pygmy elephants, and they do get a tusk that'll be, 1.5 to 2 foot long. So there is some market value, black market value for that ivory. Again, a similar project in a different location, different part of Borneo, Malaysia. I love this picture, it's awesome. But again, the primary issue here is with habitat loss. And the lady that organized this sanctuary is from the UK, and she created, I forget the name of the Rotary Club. But anyway, the NGO is called Orangutan Appeal UK. And so they, through her Rotary Club, have provided a lot of support to the local. She works in concert, as I do in my NGO, in collaboration with local authorities and local resources and organizations. In South Africa, my program is also based in South Africa, but this is an example of where a Rotary Club got together and decided they wanted, as a club, to engage in providing equipment to anti-poaching units within a specific private game reserve on the eastern Cape of South Africa. It's separate, but similar to what we're doing. And then we have a couple of primate projects that our action group has endorsed. Again, all these projects I'm mentioning are either led by or have some sort of active participation by Rotary members or Rotary clubs. This one is an organization called Mountain Gorilla Society of Canada, and there's a couple of individuals in that organization that are members of a Rotary Club in, I believe it's Edmonton, RC Edmonton, Riverview. And we have another one, also a Canadian Rotarian involved with Ape Action Africa, and that's a project to provide education resources to communities and villages in Cameroon to help the villagers understand the value of conservation, the economic value of conservation, excuse me, in those communities. Here's a project by a Rotarian down in Guatemala who put together a youth citizen science program to teach young people about the importance of pollinators. And this is a real problem in Central America. They're losing a lot of pollinators, and it's actually manifesting in loss of crops, agricultural industry. So there's an effort to turn that around and create more awareness of the issues involving the loss of pollinators. So another activity that the Rotary Club down there is involved with. And then there's my organization, which I will get into the details here in a little bit. But so we, again, are primarily operating in South Africa. We just started a project in Kenya, a feeding program in Kenya that's I tie back to wildlife security, but again, I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So let's first dive into a look at some of the factors that contribute to endangering the existence of flora and fauna. So here's a list. This is really considered to be the primary reasons or variables in leading to areas that have endangered or threatened species, and it could be either flora or fauna. So to give you some context of environmental crime, and that's what we're specifically interested in both Rotary Action Group for Endangered Species and through my NGO. To give you a little context, consider that there's 4 top criminal activities or industries on the globe. Drugs would be the number 1 at about $344 billion annually. Counterfeiting would be number 2 at about $288 billion annually. Environmental crime at $258 billion, and then human trafficking at about $157 billion. And those numbers are a little dated, but that just should provide some context. Now, bear in mind that when I talk about environmental crime, that also that's a whole big realm of different activities. It could be all of these other things listed on this slide. But what we are involved with specifically is wildlife crime, which is about a 10% segment of the larger illicit industry of environmental crime. Environmental crime, like the slide shows, does include things like pollution and poaching of timber and that kind of thing. So ground zero for large mammal consumer market is Southeast Asia, sadly. And the manner of consumption is really traditional Chinese medicine, dining, food, and status symbol. Endangered and threatened species have varying levels of trade restrictions determined by CITES. That's the Convention on International Trade of Endangered Species. All animals, if they make it to the threatened species list, they are categorized in a degree of how threatened or critically endangered they are. So there is a management system for that. And that is all set up essentially to prevent or to deter the black market of illicit wildlife trade. So again, for context, on the black market, the value pre-COVID for rhino horn, depending on the year, ranged from $25,000 to about $90,000 at the absolute peak per kilo. And there are about 8.5 kilos on average rhino horn on a rhino, on a white rhino particularly. So one dead rhino could be worth on the black market at its peak at about $250,000, one rhino. And so you can imagine that the crews, the teams that go after these animals are highly trained and well equipped. It's big business. Elephant tusks, on the other hand, the average value is about $3,000 per kilo. And that's because supply and demand. I mean, there's a lot more elephants on the planet still, far fewer than there were 100 years ago, fraction in fact, but there still are a lot more elephants than there are rhinos, globally speaking. So this is a graphic of the trade routes. You need to know that about between 85 and 95% of the global population of rhino is in South Africa now. It's really the only country that has any substantial numbers. So this graphic just basically illustrates the trade route. And pre-COVID, the systems on the mafia or syndicate side, they were so well refined and oiled that we knew that when a rhino was poached, within 24 hours, that horn was in Southeast Asia, primarily either Vietnam or China. So, is there a pointer? No. So this is the Kruger National Park. It's where my NGO works, Rhino Mercy. And specifically, well, you'll see the park is about 220 miles long, very long and skinny. It's average 40 miles across east to west, 220 miles north-south. All along the western border, the right-hand side, is the border with Mozambique. It is unfenced, and so we have on the western side of the park, we see a lot of ex-military folks from Mozambique that come in and raid and then go back into Mozambique. Where I operate is in the light green section where you see the little, I think it's a buffalo. Yeah, it's a Cape Buffalo icon. And that lighter green section is called the Greater Kruger National Park. It's all privately owned, but it's inside the Kruger. And all along the eastern side of the park, including the private part, is a 10-foot tall high-voltage fence, game fence, to keep not only the animals in from traversing into the agricultural lands and communities and cities, but to keep the poachers out. But again, an elephant or a rhino can traverse from the very western part of where we operate, on the western side of the Kruger Park, all the way to the Indian Ocean. So through Mozambique to the Indian Ocean. But we are responsible for patrolling about 30,000 acres of this particular part of the park. Here's a graph on the kill rate over the last, since about 2007. You'll see that and I got involved in 2009, 2010. The poaching statistics, the rate of poaching peaked in 2014 at about 3 to 4 animals per day in South Africa. And this is just South Africa. And you can see that it appears that there is a nice trend downward, but don't get excited because we believe that is because there are far fewer animals to poach. It's becoming much more difficult for the poachers, as sophisticated and well-armed as they are. It's becoming more and more difficult for them to find them, and we're getting better and better at detection and prevention. But the bottom line is there are very few left on the planet, and I'll get to that, I think, on the next slide. So here are some fairly recent statistics. With respect to most of these, I would say cut them in half. That's the general rule of thumb, I think, on the ground in Africa. So the African white rhino on the far left, there's probably about 5 to 8,000, I'd say 6 to 8,000 individuals left in all of Africa. And then the next one's a greater one-horned rhino that's primarily, they are primarily in India, that part of Southeast Asia, Southern Asia. And I would say that number is probably closer to 2,500 to 2,800. And the black rhino, the African black rhino is in fact critically endangered. That number is probably closer to 2,500. And then the two on the right are probably accurate. These two, the Javan and Sumatran rhinos, are considered to be extinct in the wild. And they have 24-hour security, essentially. So, now let's move a little more directly into what I do in my organization. Excuse me. So, how I got started in all this is I basically took my family, my wife and 3 kids, on a safari, a photo safari in South Africa. At the mandate of a fellow Rotarian that was a mentor of mine in Bellevue. He happened to own this part of the Kruger Park, this reserve and lodge, and he was aging, and I thought, for years I had told Alec, I said, you know what, it's not going to happen this year, and as diplomatic and as polite as I could, I put him off, and then finally we came to the aha moment and said, you know what, we need to take advantage of this and go to Africa and with him and let him show us all around, and that's all it took. We made it there. The funny thing is we left SeaTac, flew for 21 hours essentially, landed in Johannesburg, and it was raining like crazy and just storming like terrible. And I looked at my wife as we were about to deplane. I said, did we just circle Seattle for 20 hours? Because that's exactly what it was like when we left Seattle. And so anyway, yeah, I could go on forever. So I'll stick to the script here. Sorry. I love talking about this stuff, and it's the personal experiences that sort of make it rich. So anyway, the mission of my nonprofit organization is fairly simple. It's to support boots on the ground anti-poaching efforts, to support education and research from all levels, from primary schools to postdoc type opportunities, to seek ways to adapt existing technologies like sensor technologies, GPS, drones, and all that kind of stuff, adapting existing technologies to use in conservation, and to support food security initiatives that reduce subsistence poaching. And then lastly, to create a global public awareness of what's actually happening on the ground in Africa with respect to conservation and preservation. So I began building a coalition when I went to South Africa, and I went back a few months later and stayed for a few months. I lived in the bush and did that for actually several years. But I began by building a coalition between my organization, local NGOs, and my current partner, an NGO called Transfrontier Africa. And he, the director of Transfrontier Africa, actually manages our daily operations and whatnot with our anti-poaching units and research projects inside the Kruger Park. So the coalition mission that we put together was basically to make the Greater Kruger National Park the most difficult and undesirable and risky place for poachers to poach. Also to build a proud and sympathetic and environmentally patriotic community or communities that border the areas that we are responsible for, and to address the social and cultural and economic influences of poaching and illicit wildlife trade in general. The objectives of the coalition were: 1, early detection and prevention, effective monitoring and surveillance and compliance, to build community buy-in, to create that window of opportunity into the adjacent areas and communities, and lastly, to address the social decay that the false economy that's created by rhino poaching and the illicit wildlife trade. So key strategies we developed were to deploy the boots on the ground, develop effective and affordable technologies that we could use in conservation, and to create a stronger pro-environmental ethos in the communities adjacent to our patrol areas. The coalition focus is to stop gateway crimes. It's kind of like the broken windows policy. We believe that if a person can sneak into the reserve and set snares to catch impala, kudu, zebras, elephants, rhinos. We just actually had to take a snare off a rhino a couple of weeks ago. And as you can see, I usually bring a snare with me, and it's just a very, very simple low-tech device. It's just a snare, a wire snare, and a loop. It's set up in a tree or between two bushes. Animal indiscriminately walks through it, and it tightens up like a noose, and then a couple days later, it's either lost a leg or a neck. I mean, they are extremely effective. And so the bush, what you see hanging in the background there is bushmeat. So the bushmeat poachers, it's one of the wildlife crime activities. They go into the national park here and kill the animals and dry the meat and sell it in the marketplace. So a big part of what we do is to go sweep for these snares and for these bushmeat camps. So we have a multifaceted approach to the boots on the ground, and we are the first line of defense, essentially. And we use data. We're a data-driven organization, and we have a lot of different ways that we capture that data. These are pictures of pictures taken with our camera traps, or trail cams as we call them here. We tried this early on with trail cams, camera traps that were Wi-Fi enabled, and we soon came to realize that was a luxury we could not afford, because we would have these devices in the trees, and then we would be sent pictures after pictures of vervet monkeys looking in the camera, going like this, click, 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 click. And at that time, data packages for these devices was horrendously expensive, so we kind of backed out and went to the old-fashioned type, and we just went and checked SD cards on a regular basis. So anyway, that's an example of the type of data that we collect. And the graphs I'm going to show you here real quickly are old. I'm not giving away any secret or sensitive data. I just want to show you that how the data works into our process. So we use temporal. This is a graph of temporal and spatial data that we analyze. This is a 24-hour patrol coverage data versus rhino density graph. These are charts indicating APU effectiveness data. This is patrol coverage by distance covered and time of day. These are gunshot detection zones data. And then finally, the bottom line is that we use all this data in this program and algorithm that we call PROTECT. It's the longest acronym I think I've ever heard. Predictive Routine Observation Theory Enhancing Conservation Techniques. Wow. But it works. So we have all this data that's fed in on a daily basis. These reports are printed out on a daily basis, and we use this data and this information to maximize patrol effectiveness. That means where we send our people. Okay, central to our program is our all-female anti-poaching unit, the Black Mambas. And the most common question I get, I think, is probably, why women? It's a great question. And the simple answer is that in the early days, my partner and I basically sat down around a campfire one night and said, okay, this poaching problem, this was in 2012, 13, 12, 11. Anyway, it's a classic problem in Africa, okay? And the classic approach to anti-poaching has always been more guys, more guns, bigger guns. And nowhere across Africa has that approach ever worked in the medium or long term. Short term, yes, it can. It does. But in the long term, it doesn't. So the issue in our mind was that this is obviously a multi-generational problem that has to be addressed in that way. So the way to do that is simply to get to the kids, and with an attempt to build a stronger sense of environmental patriotism in the younger generation. The way to get to the kids is through the mothers, the aunties, and the grannies in the African context. That's the mothers and aunties and grannies. They feed them, they nurture them, they heal them, they teach them, they do everything with the kids. So if you want to get to the kids, you got to get to them through the women. And looking back, I can tell you that I don't think I'd ever get into the, sorry men, I don't think I'd ever get into the male anti-poaching unit business, period. The women, they come to work with their uniforms clean, with all their gear. They're not asking us for money the day after payday. They come to work sober. They don't fight amongst each other. A little bit, but it's not like the men. And we do have men on our tactical teams. But in terms of managing and the effectiveness of these women, it's amazing. And that's all I'll say at this point. They are awesome. But yes, these women are, in fact, unarmed. They patrol out in the bush amongst apex predators looking for tracks of poachers and any kind of evidence. Cut holes, wires in the fence, candy wrappers, cigarette butts. They're trained to look for all kinds of evidence. And then once they do find it, they track it and confirm it, and then we call in the tactical teams if necessary. But these ladies are fully weapons qualified and dangerous animal qualified, first aid qualified. They have all the same training that the guys do and the full-blown paramilitary anti-poaching units do. But we want them to be unarmed because we want them to go back into their communities with their kids and their families and be seen as a hero in their communities. They are earning a paycheck in conservation. They have broken that glass ceiling. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been told that this was the stupidest idea, to create anti-poaching units in Africa consisting of black women. It just wasn't going to work. Well, from day one, it was a success because we heard immediately that the chiefs, the local chiefs in the villages where we recruited these women from, they would have their town hall type meetings, and they would say to their villagers, the community members, if you are a poacher, you don't go anywhere near where these ladies work, because if you do, you make me as the chief look bad. And so from day one, this has been a huge success. And we have very little turnover, in fact. And the most dangerous thing that they do encounter on a daily basis is the wildlife encounters. But again, I think the worst thing we've had in 10 years is a twisted knee. That's some interesting stories, but a twisted knee. Okay, moving on. I know I'm running out of time. We recruited, as I said, these women from the local villages adjacent to the Kruger National Park, where we believed the majority of poachers would come from. The rangers have several duties, both on and off duty, roles, I should say, during on and off duties, and such as daily foot patrols on the boundary lines. They do this in the daytime. The apex predators, primarily the lions and leopards and such, are most active at night, as you probably are aware. So we send these rangers out on foot during the morning patrols and midday patrols because of safety issues. Then we have them in vehicles at nighttime when there is a serious threat for encounters with lions and leopards and all kinds of other things. They do roadblocks and vehicle checks inside the reserve and at the main entries and exit points. They do a lot of public outreach, as you can imagine. Different types of public outreach and community involvement and activities. Probably the crown jewel of our entire program has to do with the youth. Again, it's all about creating that higher sense of environmental patriotism at the younger levels and younger ages. So what we created was a program called the Bush Babies Youth Environmental Education Program. And we currently see, as the slide says, 13 rural primary schools, over 1,000 kids every week during the school year. And we're teaching an environmental curriculum. All of these schools, in most cases, all these schools are right on the edge. They're called edge communities to the Kruger National Park. And most of these kids have never seen an elephant in their life, but they've been told that elephants, for example, they destroy crops and they kill people. So they're no good. Well, that does happen occasionally, not very often. It's extremely rare when that does happen, and maybe 200 years ago it was more common than it is now. But we take this time and opportunity to teach them give them the whole picture. Yes, they are a dangerous animal. They are one of the big five, the elephants are, and the rhinos are. And which the big five means, sidebar, big five is the 5 most deadly animals that are hunted in Africa. So hippos kill more people than any animal, but they're not part of the big five, so nobody hunts a hippo. Okay, so anyway, so this is our crown jewel program, and Rhino Mercy, my NGO, has now expanded this program, or one like it, into the Masai Mara in Kenya, and we are now feeding 863 kids in primary schools. In 2 primary schools, we're feeding them lunch every day they show up for school. So we were told on a trip there once last year that by one of the headmasters that 86% of the children at his school would go home at lunchtime to look for food and not come back to school. So my wife and I said, okay, well, what can we do about that? And so we developed this program called the Mama Watoto Feeding Program. And we just finished the first academic year, and attendance has gone up to 100% all day long. Grades, the national testing of grades has skyrocketed, and student body populations have increased about 20%. The downside might be considered that we have heard feedback that some of the families say to the kids, this is your only meal all day long. So enjoy it. But we're glad to be there. My working theory is that if we can reduce the pressures on the family to go out and bushmeat poach for food, for subsistence, then we have met the mission of Rhino Mercy to protect the environment. And in 2016, our organization and the Black Mamba anti-poaching unit specifically was awarded the United Nations highest environmental award called the Champions of the Earth. Very proud moment for us. And they paid to have 2 of our Black Mamba Rangers flown to Manhattan to New York City, and these 2 ladies in particular had never been out of the bush for the most part, never been in an airplane, and I can tell you their reactions when I took them to Times Square was just, I thought they were going to pass out. It was just, wow. And another sidebar, teaching this group of Rangers how a GPS unit works. You know, we'd start that training, they would just all look up in the sky. I don't see a satellite. What? Where? It's just they didn't have the concept. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, so end of sidebar. So here is a short video, and we're going to close up here with an interview of one of our anti-poaching unit members.
I love nature. Since when I was high school, I fell in love with nature. The rhino means a lot in my life. I see rhino as an animal that deserves to live. Every day when I woke up going to patrol the fence, I walk with that happiness that people can see us. They won't get inside our reserve. They will know that inside the reserve there is people that are working every day. It's a nice thing working inside the reserve because you will develop that life of the animals. It was 2012 when I first see the rhinos at bush school. So that time I felt that I have to fight for the rhinos. It was my first time seeing a dead rhino. It was painful deep down to my heart. It's hard to forget. And it's hard to look at that dead rhino. It is painful, scary, but it was the first time in 2015 inside our reserve, and it was the last time. We won't rest until we catch that poachers, because we will fight for the rhinos. We will fight for wild animals. To be a Black Mamba, it changed my life a lot. Because now I know who I am. Now I can fight for everything that I have. Because I have that love inside my heart of the rhinos. So I'm proud to be a black young woman doing anti-poaching. This is our nature. Even our children want to see it. They want to see the real rhinos, not the pictures. I have hope that we can win this battle.
Okay, so now we are at the close, but with your indulgence, I'd like you to just read, I'm not going to read these, but I would like each of you to read each of these 4 points, and then as you have finished, please stand up. Awesome. Okay, these 4 things, including the 2 comments on Rotary and Rotarians, are indisputable. The facts are the facts. These are raw numbers in terms of the second and third bullet items. Nobody disputes these things. But I personally want to thank all of you here in this room for being Rotarians and for being involved in your communities and go ahead and please sit down. Thank you. Thanks for that indulgence. But it is my privilege to be a Rotarian with you, and I could talk probably for another 30 minutes on Rotary District Governor stuff, but I'm not going to. but I will put a plug in for the Rotary District Conference. It's going to be very different this year. Sidebar, sorry. Anyway, so that's it for the program. Are there any questions, or do we have time for any questions?
Probably after.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Pretty amazing what one trip to Africa has ended up being for you and for your Black Mambas and the villagers and the animals and all that. One trip. And you didn't turn around when you thought you were in Seattle. So that's good. Thank you. By the way, Tom is going to, Tom Tochterman #2, session #2 will take place after the Rotary meeting, and it'll be about glass recycling. And he's been involved with the Chelan Club and their glass recycling project, and he's agreed to stay around and talk about that. And I think he has a video that goes along with it too. So if you do, you're welcome to show that. Sarah Watkins, my apologies for the rather awkward handoff, but just remember, you won't forget it, okay? And Stephen, I've got your name right, and be prepared for when you trade in your red badge for a blue. It could be exciting. I'll practice and try to do better. Let's see, anything else? Next week, a big program. Dr. Jesse Weinberry, kind of kicking off our Black History Month. It's going to be a phenomenal program. Be a phenomenal, how many days, Eric? 3 or 4 days? Lots of activities for Dr. Weinberry to be involved in our community, in our community center, Beauchamp Center, and the schools. And it's going to be a great program, so I hope all of you will attend. The week after that, Karen, Jeff Antonellis, LAP, Mount Rainier and Climate Change, will be the speaker. February 16th, Karen Troyanella, My Life with Title 9. Should be really interesting. So thank you for coming today. We will see you next week. Thank you.